have two types of swords we can make in Rec Room. Sword number one is your pre-made sword, and that also includes all of these items down here. And then we have our custom-made swords, which uses a collision detection volume and a swing hand. Today we're going to go over making both types of sword do damage in Rec Room, but first we have to talk about making the players killable. So there's three ways that we can do health in Rec Room. We've got our world UI, which is like the life bars above your head. We have the game HUD, which is the actual life bar you see on your screen. And then we can use like an invisible variable, like an integer variable, as your health. For today, we're just going to use the world UI and the game HUD stuff. So to start out, we need to get a world UI constant, player world UI. That's what we need. This comes with a handy feature. If we configure it, first off, we have our different things within the world UI. So primary bar, that's what we're going to use. We'll leave that enabled. We'll leave that 100, 100. Animated, sure. Color, we'll do chartreuse, although I believe we could have just left it white and it would have just turned green anyway. Secondary bar, we're not worried about. Let's turn that off. Text, we won't worry about. This has an option where if you click enable when joining, it'll just turn on for everybody as soon as they join the room. That's what we want for this. So at this point, technically the person has health when they join the room, but we're also going to do the HUD UI. So next we're going to go back into our palette and we're going to get a game HUD element constant. Put that in right there. Now this one we actually have to like enable once the people join the room, but we'll do that in a second. Let's go ahead and configure it. On this one, we have node settings. We can do, you can put the game health bar upper left, upper right. You have a whole bunch of different options here. We're just going to keep it as primary, which is like the main middle bar down there. We're going to change it to green, and we're going to go ahead and bump it up to 100. And then you see here where we see set game HUD element values. This will let you kind of preview what the thing's going to look like. So if I hit that right there, when I come out, you can see I have like a life bar, but if I hit hide, it goes away. So unlike the player world UI, we do need to tell Rec Room, hey, when somebody joins, enable this for them. So we're going to start off with an event receiver set to player joined. And then we're going to get an if player is local and hook it up. So this event receiver for when player joined, it goes off for everybody all at once whenever a player joins. But we don't want it to go off for everybody. We only want it to go off for that person who just joined. So using the if player is local limits it so that yes, that player joined still does go off for everybody's system, but it won't continue past the if player is local. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, just hook that up, okay? That's what we need to know. All right, and then once we do that, we need to get the game HUD enabled. There we go. Set HUD element enabled. That's what we need. Okay, so we hook that up to the if player is local. All right, and then the target is going to be our constant there. We want to set it to true. So now when the player joins, they basically get 100 health on the bar above their head, and then using the game HUD element, they get 100 health on that little bar on their own screen. And it won't show up until I actually, like if I save the room, leave and come back, it'll pop up, or if I go ahead and activate it here, you'll see it pop up. So now the player essentially has health, they can see it, everybody else can see it. Now we're gonna work on actually making the sword do damage. This is the pre-made sword, we'll work on the custom sword after this. And the way we do that is with a player definition board. So in my previous video on making everything do damage, I used the player definition board. It's really useful, and there's some stuff you get access to in that you don't get access to in other places. One of the reasons I'm making this video is because in that video I show how to make a sword do damage, but it's an old way. It's not necessarily consistent. It's kind of difficult. And this way I think would be a lot better, especially with all the new stuff that Rec Room is making. So we've got a player definition board. You're gonna edit into the player definition board. And then in here, you want an event receiver, and we're going to configure it to melee hit player. So melee hit player is going to go off every time that a sword hits somebody, that a pitchfork hits somebody, that a bar stool hits somebody, or a broom. Like all of those different types of weapons will go off whenever melee hit. Whatever we put into this, every player that joins the room is going to have a copy of these circuits that we put in here. With these player definition boards, in order to have them work, you need to configure them and make them active and update them. So you're going to configure it, and you see here it says active. Make sure that you have that checked, otherwise it's not going to do anything. So make sure you have that checked, and then you want to push the updated definition. Okay, and usually if you don't hit that button, it'll ask you anyway once you leave. But so we see here, we've got attacking player, we have melee weapon, we have collision data, body part, damage. Now this works just like that player joined, in that it will go off every time that sword hits somebody. It will go off for everybody. So we need to limit it so that it only really goes off for somebody who is hit or the person who is doing the attacking. I'm gonna do it for the person who is actually hit. That's just the easiest way I've done it. And this one, you don't see a hit player on this one. It's actually gonna be within collision data. So we need to get a collision data get player, and we'll just put that in right there, hook that up to the collision data. So whenever it hits a player, it's gonna output whoever the player was that was hit. And then what we've actually got to do is exit out of here and make a custom event. So we're just going to get an event definition, and we're going to name it, let's just name it sword hit player, something like that. You don't even really need to name it if you don't want to. But so now that we have that event definition made, we go back into our definition board and we are going to send out this event. So we need an event sender. We're going to configure this event sender to do the sword hit, and we're going to keep it local. Oh shoot, I did this a little backwards, but we're going to get another if player is local, hook up this collision data to that if player is local, and have it run. And then we're going to send that out of the event center. Okay, sword hits somebody, sends this event to everybody. Then each system goes through and says, okay, what was the player that was hit? That's going to output here, and then that's going to go into the if player is local, limiting it so that it only continues the signal on the system of the person who actually got hit. So let's say the sword hits me, my name's going to come out of the collision data get player, and then it's going to go in here, and that makes the signal for everybody else stop, and it only continues on for me since I was hit. And then we have the event sender, which we have configured to send locally, so it's only going to send to the local player, the player who was hit. And then after that, we exit out of this player definition board, and then we're going to get an event receiver. We can place it out here somewhere. Let's just go over there, and let's configure it to the sword hit event. All right, here we're going to make it subtract whatever damage the sword did from our current health. And actually, we're going to need to record that damage somehow. And the way that we're going to do that is we have to go back into our event definition. We need to configure that and add a property that will be the damage of the sword. So let's just do damage, and then we're going to make it integer, add the property. So we added that new property of sword hit damage. Then we need to go back into our definition board here and hook up the damage from this melee hit event receiver to the event sender for the sword hit. And now this event sender will send the amount of damage that sword does, essentially. So now what we need to do is get our player's current health. We can do it two different ways. We can either get that number from the HUD, the little thing on our screen, or we can get it from the thing above our head that everybody else can see. It doesn't really matter which one you use. I think that the world HUD will require less, so we're gonna do that one. Get player world UI primary bar value. That's what we need. Okay, it's a long one, but that's the one we need. Okay, so we'll do that, and since this system is all running locally, we can leave that target as local player. We don't have to mess with it. And then we're gonna subtract whatever damage that we get from here from whatever our current world bar value is. And then after that, we need to set the world bar value to whatever the new value is. And we're actually going to hook this one up to the event receiver. So now that we've updated our bar above our head, now we need to update the bar on our screen, the HUD. So set game HUD element value. That's what we need. We'll just put that right there. We're going to hook that one up. The target for this, we have to go all the way over here to our game HUD element from earlier. And then the value, I originally had it set right here on the subtract, but there's some issue where the system goes so fast that it doesn't actually like update. So we actually need to hook it up here to get player world UI primary bar value. Now we need to check, did the person die? Is the person's health 0? So that's going to be pretty easy. We just need an if chip and a less than chip, and we'll do less than or equal. So after the HUDs are updated, we want to check and see if this primary bar value is less than 0. And then if it is 0, we want to like respawn the player, right? I'm just going to use a set position. You know, you could get more complicated with it and give them like the roll so that it turns black and white and then it freezes for a little bit and blah, blah, blah. I'm not super worried about that. So our target for this is going to be the local player. So we're just going to use a get local player. Remember, all of this is only running on one person's system. It's running on the local player system. So we want that person to be the target. And then the position, I'm just going to have them respawn in like the center of the room. You know, you can use a vector create and specify where in the room you want the person to spawn. Just in case you don't know, vector 000 is literally the exact center of the map. The Y value is going to be how far up or down. So if I did like 0 1 0, that would be in the center of the room, but up 1. And then, you know, think of it like a graph. Like that's basically how it works. But so I'm going to do 0 1 0 just so they don't spawn on the floor. And then actually in testing, it was very, very jarring for people to like respawn immediately after they died. So I'm going to put a little delay in here. And it almost looked like it didn't work because people were immediately respawned. So if it's determined that they die, then we're going to run a 2-second delay. And then after delay, set position. All right. And then once we set their position, we do need to reset all of their like HUD values and stuff just so it looks like they're fully alive again. So we're going to just copy these two and hook it up after the set position, set the value to 100. Again, hook this game HUD element all the way up over here. We're going to make it 100 again. So now we've got a system where somebody gets hit with a sword. It sends the signal out so that only that person who got hit, it's only working on their system. All right. And then once it comes over here, it's going to subtract however much damage that sword did from the person. Then it's going to update their bar above their head. It's going to update the bar on their screen. It's going to check to see if that value is less than 0 or 0. And if it is, then it's going to respawn them and it's going to reset all of their health bars and everything. So the sword does 100 damage, I believe, by default. So you could come in here if you wanted all of them to do the same amount of damage. You could unhook this and you could just set it, you know, let's say you wanted it to do 50 damage. Like you could just set it that way. You could also come in here and have some circuits so that you could check, hey, which weapon is actually doing, you know, put a tag on the sword, then say, you know, you could check which weapon is actually doing it, and then, you know, change the amount of damage that's going in here just to match whatever it is the weapon is. I'm not going to do that. That's extra complicated. This video is long enough already. Now that we've got the pre-made swords doing damage, let's get the custom swords doing damage. We need to make the custom sword first. By the way, the swing handle and the collision detection volume are going to be in beta, so you do need to enable beta content in your room. First off, you want to look up in your palette a swing handle. And I'm going to freeze it so it doesn't go anywhere. And then I would say get your model for your sword before you get the collision detection volume. We're going to use this Master Sword invention by Teamy. You want to line it up so that the swing handle is down here at the handle of your sword. Remember, the swing handle will be invisible once you're actually like in your game. Once you got that lined up, then you want to get your collision detection volume. All you want to do is put it on your sword, make it kind of line up as best you can with your sword. So you make it and then you can manipulate it and change it so that it matches up with the sword size. It's not going to match up perfect, but it's going to be fine for what we need it for. And now that you've kind of got all of these components lined up, now you just have to hook them all together with a piston or a rotator or a clamp. We're going to use a piston today. What you want to do is hook up the collision detection volume to the gold pin, the model of your sword to the gold pin, and then you want to unfreeze the swing handle and attach it to the big square part here. And with that hooked up, you can now pick up your sword, and if you'll see, the collision detection and everything is still on there. It may get a little off center, it may get a little wonky, but that's just to be expected in Rec Room. The collision detection volume has a circuit board, this one right here. I'm going to go ahead and configure it and detach it. We're going to move it over here with our other circuits. So now, just like the player definition board where it has certain events you can only access within the player definition board, the collision detection volume also has that. And if you edit into it, you can see that. You can see we have on other hit, on object hit, on player hit. We can get a blank event receiver and configure it to that, but they've already got it set up. So, and you can see it's already connected and it already goes out right here. So we're just going to use this kind of pre-made thing. So you remember how on these other ones, it always runs on everybody's system and then you have to narrow it down to only run on one person's system. Well, collision volumes only go off for the person doing the hitting. So the person that is holding the sword and hits the player, they're the one who's going to get this on player hit signal. So we actually need to send it off to the player who got hit. And the way that we do that is similar to the other way we did it. We're going to use a collision to player. We're going to hook it up to the collision data. And then we're going to get an event sender. And this is a recent thing, like maybe within the past 6 months that Rec Room has done. We're going to configure it to our sword hit, but instead of doing local, we're going to do player. You can actually send the event to a specific player. And that's what we want to do. We want to send this event out to the system of the player who was actually hit. But we'll just have it do 50 damage. Okay. And then we're going to hook up on player hit. All right. And then this will send all of that information onto the system of the person who was hit. It'll go off right here. It'll do all the same stuff we already set off, where it sets their primary bar values and everything. And then it checks to see if they're dead. And then it does all that. Let's go test it and see how well it works. All right. Something I forgot. We came in here and tried to test, and something I forgot. We have to enable the collision detection volume. So event receiver. Okay. So then you configure this to room loaded and hook that up to there. Okay, now it should work. All right, so I ran into some bugs when making this, and Yoda here helped me out a lot when it came to that. So thank you, Yoda. He also teaches a class he wanted me to let you know about. If you want some more information about the health bars and stuff, there's a video over here you can check.
And if you've made it this far into the video, 9%ers, put a bird emoji in the comments.
All right.